Mindfulness meditation, a practice rooted in Buddhist tradition, is seen as a remedy to reduce stress, improve mental health, and renew inner peace in an increasingly busy and distracted world. But as this practice begins to permeate Western religious communities, particularly Christianity, the question arises not only of does it work, but also is it compatible with faith? Some Christians view mindfulness as a helpful tool, a form of mental discipline that can complement a life of prayer. However, for many conservative religious leaders, meditation is not just a technique, but a gateway to a foreign, even dangerous philosophical system, one where the present moment replaces God's grace and inner stillness supplants the words of prayer. So what is mindfulness in the eyes of Christianity? Why does it spark controversy? Can there be reconciliation between a secularized practice and a classical faith? Or is this a manifestation of a larger conflict between tradition and modernity, between ancient spirituality and contemporary psychological science? In this episode, we'll dive deeper into the theological tensions, cultural debates, and efforts at dialogue to find mutual understanding between these two seemingly opposing worlds.
Like they come here to relax, to settle, and breathe in and out and enjoy the nature around the healing field.
Mindfulness, or mindfulness meditation, has become an integral part of modern life, from meditation apps to psychological therapy programs. But within Christian communities, mindfulness is a divisive topic. Some see it as a useful tool for reducing stress and strengthening faith, while others worry that its Buddhist origins may conflict with Christian values. According to the article Christian Mindfulness and Mental Health published by MDPI, mindfulness is a state of full awareness of the present moment, without judgment, focusing on what is happening right now, from breath, bodily sensations, to thoughts and emotions. It is often cultivated through meditation, such as focusing on breathing or observing the senses during daily activities like eating or walking. Studies cited in MDPI show that mindfulness reduces stress, anxiety, and improves mental health, particularly in the context of modern life's pressures. However, mindfulness is not merely a psychological technique. It has roots in Buddhism, specifically the practice of Satipatthana, mindfulness in the Noble Eightfold Path, aimed at achieving enlightenment. This origin has sparked debates within Christian communities. An article from Ezra Institute argues that mindfulness carries metaphysical assumptions, such as the concept of no self, anatta, which conflicts with the Christian belief in an immortal soul and a personal relationship with God. An article from Catholic World Report delves deeper, suggesting that Christian prayer is an active dialogue with God, while mindfulness often encourages emptying the mind or focusing on the self, which some theologians deem incompatible with Christian spiritual goals. For example, a mindfulness practitioner might focus on their breath to achieve stillness, whereas Christian prayer typically involves reflecting on Scripture or seeking God's guidance. Moreover, Church Life Journal points out that mindfulness programs in Catholic schools sometimes face challenges because the ideological assumptions of mindfulness, such as emphasizing self-reliance and individualism, may conflict with Christian theology, which values dependence on God and community. An article from Love of All Wisdom also questions whether the Buddhist concept of no self poses issues for Christians, particularly as it seems to deny the notion of an eternal soul. But not everyone is opposed. Some Christian theologians and therapists argue that mindfulness can be adapted to align with faith, opening a different perspective on harmony between these practices. We'll explore this viewpoint next. A key argument in favor of mindfulness within Christianity is that it is not entirely foreign to the tradition. According to the article A Reflection on Mindfulness from Religious Education, contemplative and meditative practices have long existed in Christianity. In the 4th century, the Desert Mothers and Fathers in Egypt practiced forms of silent prayer, focusing on God's presence in their hearts. They encourage sitting still with thoughts and emotions to encounter God, a practice that shares similarities with modern mindfulness. For example, John Cassian, a 5th century Christian theologian, described monastic life as a journey of complete and uninterrupted dedication to prayer. This could be called Christian mindfulness, where intentional attention is placed on God's presence, often through meditating on a Bible verse such as Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." In modern times, contemplative practices like centering prayer have revived this tradition. According to the banner, centering prayer is a way to commune with God through silence, focusing on a sacred word or phrase, such as God or peace. This sounds remarkably similar to how mindfulness encourages focusing on an anchor, like the breath, to stay present. A practical example is someone sitting in silence repeating Psalm 23:1, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing," while breathing deeply and sensing God's presence. According to Spokane Christian Counseling, this approach not only reduces stress, but also fosters a deeper relationship with God, turning mindfulness into a spiritual tool. Peace Family Counseling also supports the idea that mindfulness can be integrated with prayer and scripture meditation as a spiritual discipline. They suggest that one might practice mindfulness by walking slowly in a park, feeling each step, and reflecting on God's creation in nature. This approach combines the psychological benefits of mindfulness with the spiritual goals of Christianity. However, Focus on the Family emphasizes that mindfulness must be practiced with discernment. They advise Christians to ensure all practices are centered on God and not influenced by other philosophies. This leads to the question, can mindfulness be separated from its Buddhist origins to become a neutral tool? Despite the similarities between mindfulness and Christian contemplative practices, not everyone agrees they can be reconciled. According to Ezra Institute, mindfulness carries philosophical assumptions from Buddhism, such as the no-self concept, which denies the existence of a fixed, individual soul. In contrast, Christianity emphasizes that each person has an immortal soul, created for a personal relationship with God. An article from Catholic World Report argues that Christian prayer is an active dialogue where individuals converse with God and seek His will. In contrast, mindfulness, with its focus on emptying the mind or being present without judgment, may lead to a passive state misaligned with Christian spiritual goals. For instance, while a mindfulness practitioner might focus on breathing to achieve stillness, Christian prayer often involves reflecting on Scripture or seeking guidance. Aeon Essays goes further, suggesting that mindfulness carries deep metaphysical assumptions, such as a universe without a divine center or purpose, which may conflict with the Christian belief in a God-created and governed universe. Similarly, Church Life Journal notes that mindfulness programs in Catholic schools sometimes spark controversy because they emphasize self-reliance and individualism, while Christianity prioritizes dependence on God and community. And while Christianity prioritizes dependence on God and community, an article from Love of All Wisdom questions whether the Buddhist concept of no self could be problematic for Christians. If mindfulness encourages letting go of the self to achieve enlightenment, this may contradict the Christian belief that humans are created in God's image with eternal personal value. Some critics also worry that mindfulness could open the door to unwanted spiritual influences. For example, some argue that adopting techniques from Eastern philosophies might lead to a loss of direction in faith. However, these views are often criticized as overly extreme, as many who practice mindfulness see it merely as a therapeutic tool, not necessarily a religious practice. In practice, how is mindfulness used within a Christian context, and does it serve as a bridge or a barrier? According to MDPI, mindfulness can be integrated into Christian practices to enhance mental health. For example, someone might practice mindfulness by focusing on a Bible verse, like Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer, while breathing deeply and sensing God's peace. This approach, called Christian mindfulness, emphasizes God's presence in the present moment. Spokane Christian Counseling suggests that mindfulness can be a spiritual gateway, helping practitioners move past modern life's distractions to connect more deeply with God. For instance, someone might practice mindfulness by walking slowly, feeling each step, and reflecting on God's creation in nature, much like how the Desert Fathers sought God's presence in silence. Peace Family Counseling proposes that mindfulness can be combined with prayer and scripture meditation as a spiritual discipline. For example, someone might practice mindfulness by sitting in silence, focusing on their breath, and repeating a verse, like Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened," to feel comforted. However, Focus on the Family stresses that mindfulness must be practiced with discernment. They advise Christians to frame all practices within their faith, ensuring mindfulness doesn't become an end in itself, but a tool to draw closer to God. In contrast, Ezra Institute warns that integrating mindfulness could lead to religious syncretism, blurring the lines between Christianity and other philosophies. So, can mindfulness and Christian faith be reconciled, or will they remain in conflict? According to the banner, when mindfulness is used as a tool for healing and drawing closer to God, it can become part of a Christian spiritual life. For example, someone might use mindfulness to focus on God's presence while reading Psalm 23 or praying in silence. However, Catholic World Report and Ezra Institute emphasize that the Buddhist origins of mindfulness cannot be ignored. Philosophical differences, like no self versus an immortal soul, pose challenges to integration without compromising the essence of Christian faith. Church Life Journal also warns that adopting mindfulness indiscriminately could lead to misunderstandings of spiritual purpose. Looking forward, we may see a balance, as suggested by Faithful Path Community, where mindfulness is adapted to align with Christian values. Spiritual leaders might develop Christian mindfulness programs, combining meditation, prayer, and scripture reflection to meet the needs of those seeking both mental health and spiritual connection.